So, I'm Coming Jie from Group 1, and I will present the title Web Server. So, first of all, what is Web Server? Web Server actually is the combination of software and hardware that use HTTP and other protocol to respond to client requests made over the World Wide Web. The main job of a web server is to display website content through storing, processing, and delivering web pages to users. So these are the example of web server. I think the most popular one and the most familiar one is the Apache HTTP server. So Apache HTTP server is developed by the Apache Software Foundation and it's a free and open source web server for Windows, Mac, Linux, and other operating systems. And next, I will introduce the architecture of web server. Basically, got two types of architecture. First is two-tier architecture, and the next is three-tier architecture, and also this is the most common one. So for the three-tier architecture, basically consists of the presentation tier, application tier, and the data tier. For the presentation tier is basically responsible for the form of information display and user data input facility. Basically, it's like the front end lah. So for the application tier is like will involve some data processing, and this may also involve the database interactivity. Then the last is the data tier. Basically is the storage of data. And the image, this image is the three-tier architecture. The evolution version of web server. This one I think you guys can like search from the web. So I will skip this. So the most popular web server in this year, in 2021, the Apache is the best and also the most popular server. So from this image, we can see that the Apache mostly got 38% of the user is using this server. So why the Apache will be the most popular is because Apache is considered the open source software, which means the original source code is freely available for viewing and collaboration. And also being open source has made the Apache very popular with developers who have built and configured their own module to apply specific functionality and improve on its core feature. Next is the comparison between web server. This image is basically the comparison between some web server, for example, Apache, yeah, that's. Then the comparison is based on some features and also the performance at the platform. So if anyone got interested, then maybe can refer to that link. I think that's all for me. Thank you.
Can you guys see?
Yes.
So my name is MIRZA Shahid AFRIDI. I am from Group 2 and I am going to present our topic web browser. So a web browser is an application software for accessing the World Wide Web or a local website. When a user requests a web page from a particular website, the web browser retrieves the necessary content from a web server and then displays the page on the user's device. So there are many browsers, for example, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, and Opera. Web browser architecture. There are many commercial browsers that interprets and display a web document. Almost all of them use the same architecture. The browser is usually made of three parts: control, client, program, and interpreters. The controller gets input from the mouse and keyboard and uses the client's program to access the document. Then the browser renders and displays a document, keeping an internal list of where the elements of the documents are displayed on screen. Controller obtains the coordinates of the user's cursor from Windows system and compare them with the coordinates of the object display in the page. If a link has selected, the controller extracts the stream from the URL. This determines which client will be used to fetch the document. The browser fetches the document and, depending on the document type, calls the appropriate interpreter to render and display the document. Evolution of the web browser. So the very first web browser was created on 1991, and every 2 or 3 years a new browser came, and the latest we got so far was Google Chrome. So the most popular browsers according to the WC Counter March 2022 was Chrome, because Chrome was the fastest web browser. When one click, it loads the web page and we can go browse anything with a matter of time. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Can you guys see my slide? Hello?
Yes, we can see.
All right. So I will proceed. So for my group, we are going to present for the two-tier architecture and the three-tier architecture. So what is so as we know that tier is uncommon in our subject. We already learned from the first sems. So to be recap, we need to know what is the tier. So multi-tier is a client-server architecture that consists of consists of presentations, application processing, and data management functions, which are physically separated. So there are a lot of architecture that consists of the tier, especially consists of tier 1, tier 2 tier, and others until n tiers. And then it is in presentation layer, which we also known as client layer. It is on the top of the layer of an application where the layer can access the web pages. And then the functions of this layer is to communicate with the application layer. And then we have application layer, we known as logical layer. It controls an application's functionality by performing detailed processing and act as the mediator between the presentation and database layer. So in other words, we can just know an application is to perform the operations on the applications. And then for the data layer, it is stored in this layer. The applications layer communicates with the database layer to retrieve the data. So data layer is commonly known as share and retrieve. So what is the purpose of the tier in the network in the architecture? So tier is used for solutions for scalability, security, fault tolerance, and maintainability. So it also helps the developer to create a flexible and reusable applications. It helps to separate user application with physical database and also to support multiple view of data. So this is the sample of two-tier architecture in database management system. Mostly two-tier is in the presentation layer that runs on a client, and data layer gets to store on a server called the second tier. The two-tier architecture mainly provides added security to the database system. It is not exposed to the end user directly. It will provide direct and faster communications. And then this is the sample of the two-tier diagram. So as we always know, it is a simple tier in our daily life. And then this is for the three-tier architecture. So difference from the two-tier architecture, it is mainly for development, maintenance, functional processes, logic, data access, data storage, and user interface. It also can be done in the separate modules. Mainly three-tier in the presentation layer, application layer, and database layer. So for the presentation layer, normally we have PC, tablet, mobile, while for the application layer, we have server, and also for the third, we have database server. And then what is the function of, what is the goal for three-tier client-server architecture? It is mainly to separate the user applications and physical database, to support DBMS characteristic, program data independent, support multiple views of the data. So, for example, currently we are using a website. It is one of the example of three-tier client-server. So this is the sample. This one is actually a simple three-tier diagram, but in a normal life, we can see that three-tier are more complex than these diagrams. So what are the advantage of two tiers? So we have a few advantage. Mainly, it is high internal network. It provides redundancy of network services. It limits available data on access layer hosts. It simplifies end user settings. Its maximum user satisfaction is gained with accurate and fast prototype using robust tools. Application to homogeneous environment. Homogeneous environment means hardware and software from one vendor, hardware and software from same spots. And then higher performance when the database server and business logic is physically attached. Okay, so why we shouldn't use two-tier? Because two-tier will become slow when the number of users increase. Their performance will degrade. And then two tiers is very high in terms of cost. And then changing rules and regulation on business setting makes the performance slow. Problem in controlling the new version of software, distributions, versions. The dispersions of application. The dispersion means when it's update or changes, it will affect all the existing clients that are currently using 2-tier services. And then changes in database structure when intimate results in prevailing structure. So what is the advantage of 3-tier? Why we should use 3-tier architecture? Wait for a moment. Okay, sorry. For the advantage of 3-tier architecture, it is improved on scalability, where the servers can be deployed on many machines, means within one system, the server can be acted in many places, and then the database doesn't make longer connection with every client. And then 3-tiers improve data integrity, improve security, load balancing, where the division of core business from database server is low, high performance, better to reuse, scalability, and easy to maintain and modify compared to the 2-tier architecture, right? And then for the advantage of 3-tier architecture, as we know just now, 3-tiers are more complex than 2-tiers, and then client does not maintain persistent database connection, and then they require a separate proxy server, and then network traffic will be increased if a separate proxy server is used, and then physical separation of application server. That whole database may affect the performance and then also improve complexity. So this is the difference between 2-tier and 3-tiers. So mainly for the first row, the only difference in between of the layers, and then for the second row we have which places or which implement in which part of the tiers, and then for the third row we have their advantage that just now I have explained on the both advantages, and then for the fourth row we have client difficulty and client connections, and then yeah, that's all from me. Thank you.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Nice. Okay, this one. Okay. Wait. Okay. Okay. Wait. Let me do something about this. I know how. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm group 4. I'm AHMAD. Sorry. Seems like I'm showing the wrong screen. Can someone tell me?
Yeah, I cannot see your slide.
It's like telephone on. Something wrong. Right. Nice one. Right. Alright. Good. I'm AHMAD. I'm group 4. So my team will tell about what's different between Git and GitHub. So what is Git? Git is a version control system designed to make it easier to have a multiple version of a code base. Sometimes it across multiple platform developer or team. It allows you to see changes you made to your code and easily revert them. It's not a GitHub. What is a GitHub? GitHub is a website that hosts Git repositories on a remote service. Hosting repositories on GitHub facilitates the sharing of code base among the teams by providing a GUI to easily fork or clone repos. to a local machine. By posting your repositories to GitHub, you will pretty much automatically create your own developer portfolio as well. Yes. So this is the advantage and disadvantage of Git and GitHub. The advantage is it makes it easier to contribute to your open source project. Yes. And we also has the documentation. If you ever use GitHub, you sometimes you see the readme.md, something like that, and you see the documentation of their project in GitHub. And to showcase your work, yes, you can show your work, so maybe big companies can see your work and repeat you. They can translate company and markdown. You also can have a GitHub repository and track change or in your code across version. This is what we call the version control. And the disadvantages, right? Security. The word security here, it doesn't mean that GitHub is not secure. It means that in GitHub you can download all these people project. So we suggest that you download from the trusted developer. So because sometimes when you run the program, it might do something that you don't want to do with your computer. Maybe there's a virus or something. So make sure you download the project from a trusted developer. And pricing is actually not disadvantages, because we actually has free pricing over here for people like us, not extreme and the price. So it's not really a disadvantage, but yeah, give and take. You want more, you pay. So that's the advantage and disadvantage. So this is a different. Git is first developed, not important. Git is installed and maintained on your local system rather than cloud. So which means we not GitHub. The version control is only will be done in your local system. If your computer is gone, then your code is also gone. And one thing that really set Git apart is the branching model. Git is a high quality version control system. Then for Git. Now GitHub. GitHub is designed as a Git repository custom service. You can share your code with others, giving them power to make revision or edit. GitHub is exclusively cloud-based atas awan online. GitHub is a cloud-based hosting. So how to install Git? So now we will work for Git. Okay, this how to install Git. You can choose your operating system. If you use Windows, just download for Windows. Or maybe you want to use something with UI fancy stuff, you can use this, but programmers do that to type, so I think this one is good for them. So choose your standalone installer. If you want to install on your computer, portable, you can bring to the PC with your pen drive, take your operating system Git. Then after that, you will see something like this on your computer, Git bash. Yeah, this one you can already can put. Yeah, you can go to your project. Go to your project and start working with GitHub. But this is not my favorite way. My favorite way is by doing it on by VSK. So to do GitHub, after install Git, you will see Git bash on your VS2 over here. Then VS2 will automatically bring you to the project directory, and over here you can set up your version control. But right now we plan for the Git. So now for the Git part. So okay, firstly you need to have an account, of course, and a repositories to store your code, and just make some repository name. Yes, we want repositories. Right. Okay, done creating the repository. Then you don't know what to type over here, don't worry. You can see at the GitHub, they got everything ready. The documentation is perfect. This is for if you want to upload your code to the GitHub. You can also clone this GitHub repository by just use this and type git clone this repository's link, and you can clone the Git. So this one I will show how to put your code to the cloud. Yeah. So first git init, and then we add something like git.ino, the file that we don't want to put on GitHub, and give me empty something there. that the init do. So after done git init, this one git add, git add, git add dot, which means GitHub will upload everything in this workspace into the cloud. Okay, I mean to the local first. And git commit is to commit your project, and .m is mean for message, is your first message parameter. You can write anything over here. Okay, then commit. After that, we change the branch to main. Like you see over here, this the branch is master. So we just change to main. You can also use master if you want, but this one has to use main. And this one is to tell the git that which is the link, where is the link to your GitHub repository. And this is to push your code to GitHub. Right. After done pushing, then you can see your code. Your code is ready on GitHub. So I think that's done for the configuration and how to use GitHub and everything. Then probably. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, FIRDAUS. Can you guys hear me?
Thank you.
Can you see my slide?
Yes, can.
Yes.
So, hello and good evening, everyone. My name is AHMAD RIZAL. I'm from Group 5. I'm from Group 5, and the topic from my group is XAMPP server package versus WAMP server package. Now, note that I will be explaining about the XAMPP and WAMP server. So I will be explaining what is XAMPP and WAMP server, and then I will be explaining the advantages and the disadvantages, and then the WAMP versus AppServe, and then the architecture, and then the installation for XAMPP server, and as well for the installation for the WAMP server. So let me start. What is WAMP server? Where XAMPP and WAMP servers are termed to be XAMPP servers are termed to be free and open source web server packages that are designed to make the web servers work on your PCs. Both of these stacks comprise of PHP, Apache, and multiple of other software needed to make an application and website function. For the sake of databases, a web server contains MySQL, but on the other hand, XAMPP now comes with MariaDB instead of MySQL. Both of these stacks are very much beneficial to smoothly operate and evaluate websites and web apps locally on an end user desktop or laptop. Although both consist of similar kind of software needed for operating a web server, but they also have some dissimilarities in terms of their functionalities. So what are the advantages and the disadvantages? For XAMPP, the advantages of using XAMPP is that XAMPP web server is easy to configure and use. It is also a cross-platform software available for all kinds of operating systems such as Linux and Windows. XAMPP also lets the users to initiate and end the whole web server plus database stack with just one command. But for the disadvantages of XAMPP is that the setting in XAMPP are quite difficult to do if compared with XAMPP WAMP server. So move on to the WAMP advantages. WAMP server is easy to use, which is when user want to change configuration. Also, WAMP is also easy to code in PHP and creating a database in MySQL Windows. WAMP is available for both 64-bit and 32-bit system. While for the disadvantages, it is not easy to install it compared with XAMPP. Next, we move on to the WAMP versus AppServe. WAMP is actually an acronym that stands for Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Good to know is that WAMP derives from LAMP. The L stands for Linux. A software stack, which means installing WAMP which means you have to install Apache, MySQL, and PHP on your operating system. Even though they are usually bundled up, you also can install them separately. But for the AppServe, AppServe is a fully featured of Apache, MySQL, PHP, and PHP.MyAdmin. Necessary utility for helping you start using content management systems such as WordPress. AppServe will also install Apache, PHP, MySQL, and PHP.MyAdmin. Once it's installed, you have access to a web server and another database server. We move on to the XAMPP servers architecture and WAMP servers architecture. So the XAMPP server is like in the image. What it's gonna do is that it's gonna do the basic requesting and acknowledging data, whereby the client will request the data from the server, and then the server will acknowledge the request from the data and transfer the data to back to the client, and the whole transmission is connected through a router. While for the web server, client is connected to the via the internet, and when the client is requesting a data, the web will access the database to retrieve the data and then send it back to client via the internet as well. That is for the architecture. For installation, this is for the installation of SAM server. I believe that everyone is familiar with this, but I will carry on as well. We go to the website. We go to the website of Apache Friends, and then we download for the Windows. Click on that, and once the download is finished, we see this kind of exe. So click on it. Click on this exe file, which will be founded in your downloads folder as default for Windows. So when clicked, you will have your click yes, and then next, a window will pop up, and then click yes. This is the most this one I have to explain. When we're installing this, this comes as an addition. What kind of add-on would you like to install inside your XAMPP? So click only on the things that you want to add to your XAMPP. But I would suggest ticking all. So next, click next, and then select an installation location. I prefer to have having the default name for folder, and then click OK. Doing so, confirm your selected folder as your XAMPP installation location. Click next, and when this window pop up, you have to uncheck the learn more about Binami box, and then click next. Begin installing XAMPP and click finish. Once finished, they will ask you about the language and pick the language English. And if you want to run the XAMPP control, just type in XAMPP control here, and then run as administrator. So how to use the XAMPP server? Once open, we have this kind of window. Initially we'll have this button will say start, and this is start. So what we're going to do is run the Apache and the MySQL when to use it by pressing the start button at action, because the Apache is the web server and the MySQL is the database. So just start here and start here. Pressing the admin button by MySQL will open the PHP MyAdmin. This the admin button is right here, besides the stop button and stop button here. How to configure this XAMPP server? Start the XAMPP control panel through the run as administrator option, like I explained before, and then click on the XAMPP control panel will appear. So to change the default of port of Apache, open the XAMPP control panel in Apache module service. Click on the config button. Click on Apache httpd.nf. By pressing the Control F key, find the listen 80 and replace it with another open port like 81 or 90, 80, and save the file. So that's it for XAMPP server. Now for the WAMP server. So we will go to this website here to download the latest version of WAMP. And this window will pop up. So just click next when just accept the agreement and click next. This is for the destination folder. So choose your folder. I would prefer choosing the default button, the default folder location, and then click next. Select whether you want the quick and launch icon or not. This is very basic, so just click next and then install. Once you have download, once installation is finished, select the default browser WAMP server going to use. And then this window will pop up, and so we have to supply the PHP main parameters and then click next. So once we click next and the installation is finished, this is how to test if the PHP is installed properly. Okay, the PHP file containing code PHP echo PHP info, and save it as test the PHP. Run this file on your web server, and if you get an output like this, then the PHP is then it indicates that the PHP is installed correctly. So how to configure here? We have multiple things to configure on web. So I will just say that we can configure the services, change the database, PHP. We can also configure the PHP version, the virtual host, change the Apache port, change the DBMS port and empty logs, and also we can also configure the change language. So how to use the web server? Click on the web icon. On the web icon, and the web control panel will be open. To start or stop or want to restart the server is to press the start all services. Start all services at the web control panel. The My project is consists of all the project that we have, and same as them, the PHP My Admin is to when open the PHP My Admin database here. So that's all from me. Thank you for listening. We proceed to group 6. Ni aku dah buka.
Can you guys see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Alright, so hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is SYAQIRAH and FATIHAH. I'm from group 6. I will explain about front end development. Okay. What is front end developer? Front end developer is a person who built the front end portion of website and web application, which is the UI, user interface, right? And then front end framework, a scaffold for building of our front end. It usually includes some way to structure our files, for example, via components or a CSS preprocessor, make AJAX request, style our components, and associate data with DOM elements. How front-end framework exists. Complex interfaces are usually made of the same components. You should be able to create and use these components to easily create new pages. Since some manipulations are slow, you want to perform as few elements update as possible. Your code should be maintainable, easy for you and others to read, test, and change. Next, these are the example of front-end framework: Bootstrap, Semantic IO, Vue, React, and Angular. How front-end development works? A front-end developer uses web languages like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to construct websites and applications. The design elements you see on a website were produced by a front-end developer. Next, moving on to the advantages using front-end framework. It is easy and quick to get started. A consistent, standardized front-end approach, more reliable, help is readily available. The disadvantages using front-end framework: overly complex for simple project. This framework can add unnecessary load to a simple loading page that don't often benefit from the efficiencies they provided. Next, wasted time, not learning how to code, and technical debt. Most popular front-end framework. React is the open source framework developed and created by Facebook. The framework is the best UI framework of 2022, used by a majority of front-end developers according to Stack Overflow Developers Survey 2021. Pros for the popular front-end framework: an open source library with a diversity of tools. The steady code is supplied by one direction data movement, and the contrast is absence of documentation due to significant space development, the comparatively long learning curve. All right, that's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. Good evening. Can everyone see my slide?
Yes, yes.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Arif MUIZZUDDIN. I'm from Group 7. So today I will do a presentation on topic 7, which is back-end development. Okay. First of all, what is the back-end developer? The back-end developer is the person who is charged to do these 4 tasks. Create functional system, maintaining system, system testing, and system debugging. Okay. So what is the skills needed to be the back-end developer? Mostly there is 4 items that we need to focus. We need to polish the skill, which is on how to set up the server, managing the database, know what is the programming language, and also the API, application programming interface. Yeah. Usually back-end developer contain more programmer when working in group rather than front-end developer. Next, what is the back-end framework? There is 3 sample here, Laravel, then Django, and ASP.NET. Okay. Framework is a software which a foundation where developers can make application much faster and more standardized way. This is a framework that is well known by many developers, which is Django, Laravel, Express.js, ASP.NET, Spring Boot, and Flask. There are many features that is provided in each framework. Each framework has its unique feature. So it's depend on developer which framework to use. It's very crucial when developer need to know which framework to use. So it won't consume much time to do the development. Okay. Next, how backend development works. So basically, backend developer boot code that allows a database and application to communicate with one another. Like how to communicate with XAMPP, RAM, and PHP, which the database. Yeah. Backend development languages handle the behind the scenes functionality of an application. So the backend developer needs to know how to handle this functionalities so the application of the system will not crash. So the backend usually consists of 3 parts: the server, application, and the database. Every information will be stored and organized by backend system. This is what the backend system do. They will store the information. And yeah, this is very crucial part in any system application, which is they need database to work and server. So what is the advantage and disadvantage when using back-end frameworks? The advantage is time saving, which is this is the biggest advantage of the software framework. This is why the framework is created. Next is the efficient. So the developer have more time developing software requirement rather than taking more time to prepare the environment tools for the development. Next, the more cleaner and extensible. Give more clean code and extensible for future reference as it follow design pattern of each framework. Next, the disadvantage, no personalized automated operation. There is no alternative for specialized automated service, making market difficulty impossible to fix. Limited count operation. There are only a few count operation that fluctuate from time to time and do not pass 160 characters. And less control. Consumer less network power, which prevent them from carrying out their desired activities. So what is the most popular backend framework? So you can see the statistic here for March 2021, which is the Laravel is the top, which is the most popular framework, followed by the Django and Flask history. So this is the sample. What is the Laravel? Laravel is an open source MVC framework written in PHP for web application development, created in RIZAL, Taylor, Otwell as derivation. You guys can read this after the presentation if you want. I just will show what is the framework. This is the Django high-level Python framework. It's using Python language and Flux also written in Python. Okay. This is the most popular backend framework for 2021 in March. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Can you guys see my slide?
Can see.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and good evening to everyone. I'm Muhammad from Group 8, so I will be presenting about the full stack developer. So what is a full stack developer? A full stack developer is a software developer who can work on both client and server software. To execute their work properly, full stack developers must have some knowledge of a wide range of coding specialties from database to graphic design and UI or UX management. For example, a tiny independent gaming group with only a few members developing a model simulator could only need one back-end developer and one front-end developer to complete the project. If they are even smaller, they may just have one full-stack developer who oversees the entire app. What is a full-stack framework? A full-stack web framework is a framework that supports development of front-end users and interface, back-end logics, and communication with database. A full-stack web framework has all functionality from client-side to store data storage at server. Full-stack developers use frameworks to develop, optimize, and maintain websites and other web applications. That is how full-stack development works. So full-stack development refers to the development of both back-end, server-side, and front-end, which is the client-side. So the front-end development consists of the entire user-facing parts of software development. It is the responsibility of the front-end developers to implement visual elements, for example, how the software or an app will look, interact, and operate with the users. As for the back-end development, it is done to make a program function well. Developers who work at the back-end spend a lot of time creating and working with the database. So next is the advantages and disadvantages of the full-stack framework. So there are 4 advantages which it can master all the approaches used in a development project. Next, it can assist all members of the team, minimize the project cost, and transition between front-end and back-end development depending on the situation. So for the disadvantages, it is possible that the solution chosen is inappropriate for the project. The solution adopted may be influenced by the developer's abilities. A key person risk may occur as a result of solution. And lastly, being a full stack developer is becoming more challenging. So the most popular full stack framework, there are 10, which Node.js, Django, Laravel, Android SDK, Spring Boot, ASP.NET, REST, Symfony, .NET, and Spring. So that's all from me. Thank you for listening.
Waiting di design now. Can we start recording? Yes. Start recording. Kita lebih dah. Kita 10 minit.